Gospel of Misguidance suppose certain manifestations of the most pure and holy essence, which are manifested in the pages of the universe and in the levels of beings, to be the most pure and holy one himself, and ascribe the decrees of the divinity to certain creatures. They attribute some of the all glorious one's works to nature. However, it is demonstrated with conclusive proofs in numerous places in the Risale-i Nur that nature is a divine art. It cannot be the artist. It is a dominical book and cannot be the scribe. It's an embroidery and cannot be the embroiderer. It is a register and cannot be the accountant. It is a law and cannot be the power. It is a pattern and cannot be the source. It is a recipient and is passive and cannot be the author. It is an order and cannot be the orderer. It is a code of creation and cannot be the establisher of the code. So inshallah, any comments so far?
Yeah, I think Al-Qayyumiyya, as we will see, is, as you pointed out, it pertains to the continuous giving of existence to creatures by Allah. He doesn't just create and then leave things to their own devices. And I think what's happening at the beginning of this section about Qayyumiyya is he is making it absolutely clear that there is nothing else in creation that can aid or help or interfere or intervene in creation. Nothing has the power to create either itself or to create the things which are needed for its continued existence. So he's making it absolutely clear that there is only one creator, and he's doing this in a number of ways. He's showing us that just because some things appear to be of greater stature than other things, or they appear to be more difficult or more numerous or more whatever, for him that is no obstacle. So whether it is one atom or whether it is a whole universe of atoms, for him it's absolutely the same. There is no difference between the two. And he's proven this or shown this in many other places in the Risale, using the sun as an example. He says, because of the mystery of divine proximity, of the closeness of Allah to his creation, and the utter alterity or the utter otherness of the creation and its utter distance from God, then it is very easy for God to treat one atom as though it were a whole universe of atoms, and vice versa. And we see that with an example of the sun. The sun shines on a million different droplets of water, and in every droplet of water there is a manifestation of the sun. The sun itself doesn't exist in that droplet of water. The manifestation of the sun exists, and it doesn't matter whether it's one droplet or a million droplets, whether it's one piece of glass, a tiny piece of glass, or a huge piece of glass. The sizes of the recipients make no difference to Allah, you know, whether it's large or whether it's small, whether it's an atom or whether it's a planet. For him, they are all equal. So I think this is setting up the scene, you know. He's setting up the scene to reassure us that we will be talking about Qayyumiyya as being about the continuation of creation. And if you think that anything can continue by its own power, then, you know, you have to think again. And I think this is what he's doing. He's setting the scene, and, you know, he's clearing the decks, if you wish to use a sea metaphor. He's clearing the decks so that we can be absolutely sure that, you know, he's talking about there is only one power, only one source of power, and not a multiplicity of sources of power. Allahu Alam.
As you gave the example of the sun is not, for example, itself in the world, right, on the earth, but its manifestations are everywhere. Alhamdulillah, right before the meeting, I went outside walking, and it was shining. Like I saw the manifestation of the sun everywhere. As you said, sun in that sense is everywhere in the earth. Just like it says, although Allah is not, He is in no place, but through His power and knowledge, He is present everywhere, right? With His all attributes and with His all names, with His seeing, hearing, power, knowledge, with His wisdom, with His nurturing. He is everywhere at all times. As you said, it's a good setting the scene. Mustafa Hocam, any comments so far?
Okay, Bismillah. Thank you very much. I really like this sun example, which gives us a lot of kind of understanding of the manifestation of the Qayyumiyya. I think the more we talk about the Ism Qayyum, the more we realize that how comprehensive, how deep the name of Allah. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he asked the Sahabis, do you know what is the greatest verse in the Quran? One of the Sahabi, which is well known for his reading of Quran, he responded back to him, which is Ayat al-Kursi. So when we look at the beginning of the Ayat al-Kursi, which is the Surah Baqarah, Ayah 255, Allah describing Himself, Allahu la ilaha illa hu, huwal hayyul qayyum. So first Allah, and there is no God but Him. And then the next word is He is Hayy and He's Qayyum. So you start also using a term, Zat-ı Hayy Qayyum Zülcelal. So He is high, He is ever living, and He is keeping everything in the state of like stability and existence. And also we see the last term is the Zülcelal, because when Ustad is saying here, for sure, one for whom the creation of the stars is as easy as that of particles. So when we go to the, let's say, space, we see a very disciplined manner, like every star is listening, like listening, one soldier is listening to the commander-in-chief. It's like the Jalal meaning is appearing there. But at the same time, so all of these big objects, which is thousands times bigger than the earth, is standing there with no clashes, no power underneath, like we don't see something is like pushing them, but Allah is hanging them there with the perfect order. Of course, these are some of the rules and laws Allah is putting to the universe to keep them in that positions. But the same power and laws, we see it in the world of the particles. I mean, last week we talked about the seawater and how miracle the seawater, which we see like around us, and we can maybe analyze it to a certain level. But when Ustad is mentioning, I think this is also in the 30th Flash, he's saying that we need 2 telescopes. The one telescope was to see the far distant objects like big stars and the space, and another telescope, which is the microscope. We need to look down to the micro level, which is the particles, elements, atoms. Even we were thinking that the smallest unbreakable part is the atoms, but down the atoms, we realize there is protons, neutrons, even the subatomic level particles all the way to the ether. So maybe we can touch it here a little bit with this, for sure, one for whom the creation of stars is as easy as the particles. How how can we understand this? So in this page, if you think like all these words is something like a button we can click, let's click with the particles, which is underlined. The particles is quite interesting world. I mean, it's very different worlds than what we are living around us. To be able to go down there, I mean, you have to click maybe more doors, like you want to enter to the particles from the chemistry perspective, or from astronomy, or from, let's say, physics, biology, or civil engineering perspective, because Allah created a different world which He is holding, sustaining those atoms, connecting together, with the power. Because if we play that power and energy, we know what happened in the Hiroshima, Nagasaki in the Second World War. There is a tremendous energy, and there is a lot of different properties and characteristics when Allah is keeping them on certain geometry and dimension and combination. Because what matters, like what we call it as a matter, having some protons, electrons is circulating around the nucleus. So from one kind to another one is what's determining is the number of protons. So we don't want to go here like too much details, but just touching a little bit the differences and how Allah is manifesting His name Qayyumiyah in the particle level. So as chemists or biologists or physicists, when they are diving there, they see these properties. I mean, there's a huge energy, but the same energy, we see it also between the stars. If these particles are the building blocks of the universe, whoever has in charge in the particle world has the same charge in the bigger picture. So if someone can make the hydrogen and oxygen together, he can make the stars also together. This is as easy as for him. Similarly, as we said in the sunlight, if I open my window, let's say I am in New York, so I'm getting the sunlight. If everyone, let's say 10 million people opens their window and look at the sun, there is no difficulty. There is no obstacle. So 1/1 million, it doesn't make any difference for it. So for also the whose power is subjugated, the greatest thing in the same way that the most minor is subjugated. Because the amount of energy Allah is using in the micro level is, we can say, that is much greater than the bigger objects. So this doesn't have any kind of a challenge for him, and he's showing with the little manifestation here and how great power and how complicated it is. We are seeing in the particle world and also in the in the world of the like space, these planets and the solar system. Thank you.
Jazakallah. That was a good one. When you said he's employing the same power, right? For example, he doesn't like, so to speak, he forces himself when he's employing his power on, for example, stars. So he employs the same power on the particles and stars, and I guess that's also why, for example, the particles are as amazing as the stars, right?
Yes. One thing I would like to add, because as we are scientists or chemists taking our journey in the world of particles, or the astronomist is taking their journey to the space, we are putting some branding and naming the things we can realize. We are not inventing or creating anything, but if we are dealing with objects and we realize that between two objects, there is a connection. Is there a wire or rope between them which holds them? physically, when we look at it, there is no something like visible. But when you play with it, there is a connection. So the Kepler, the scientist, he realized that for the, let's say, solar system, the objects which has the weight has, they attract to each other. So there is a repulsion attraction. So he's saying that anything who has a weight, and he's describing this, how the solar system is staying there. But when you look at also down in the low level, so the atoms, which is also having some kind of attraction and keeping that energy over there, but how they decide, how they are gonna kind of come to that level, why they are not like kind of making a long distance, but making a shorter distance. From that distance, also staying there, Allah also create unique advantages. It's not like something random. So there is a power, but this is not a crazy power which does like anything it wants. No, there is a law. If there is a law, it's a universal, that means whoever is the owner of that law in the atomic level, he is the owner of the law in the stars. So this gives us a clear evidence that it's an extension or continuation of the same power, which we can feel it anywhere we go in the universe.
I think Mustafa is pointing to an extremely important principle here, the principle of holism, and the fact that the creation is one unit, basically. It's concentric circles within concentric circles and intersecting circles, and the whole thing is just one Amr, it's just one thing. We see it as a multiplicity, but we know that behind that multiplicity there is unity. So it comes down to systems again, and I think Harun is here. He might want to say something about systems. Every part of the system shows that the owner of the system is one, and it functions and operates in accordance with one principle. Anything which exhibits, which evinces holism, must be from one source. It can't be from multiple sources. There's also something very subtle in Ustad Nursi's phraseology here. When he talks about the fact that God cannot be fragmented, when we come to actually talk about the names and the continuous creation of beings, it's very tempting, and I've heard people say this, to say that God gives his power to things. Things don't have their own power, but God gives them the power so that they can act. This is false, because God's power cannot be fragmented. God cannot give of his power to entities for them to use. It's as though people, they want to attribute absoluteness to the creator, but they still can't get away from the idea of things being able to, for example, walk and talk with their own ability, with their own power. And it comes down to not wanting to submit our ownership. We don't want to actually believe that we don't have any power. So we say, okay, God is all powerful, but he gives us some of his power. He invests some of his power, or he places some of his power in us so that we can act. This is a myth, it's a fiction. And this is why Ustad is very careful to say God cannot be fragmented. And I think that's what he is alluding to, that you cannot fragment God's names and give them to the creation. It's meaningless. Thank you.
Colin Hocam, I just wanted to add something. Likewise, in a similar fashion, angels are representatives of the names of God, orienting or guiding the unliving or living things to their duties, but not ruling them. It is Allah who commands and rules all beings. So I can say all power to Allah.
Absolutely. Angels are there for us, actually. We talked about angels before as a kind of filter. You know, we said that you can't look at the sun directly. And in order to be able to look at the sun, we have to affix a kind of filter to our telescope or to our binoculars or to our glasses if you want to look at the sun. Now, it's not the sun that needs the filter. We need the filter. So it's like saying, you know, Allah needs the angels because the angels carry out his amr, his functions. But that's not true because he directly carries out the functions. The angels are the filter through which this happens, and that filter is necessary for us. Otherwise, you know, we cannot see Allah directly. We have to see the manifestation, and that manifestation is occasioned by the existence of angels. So it's for us. It's not for him. So yeah, Hussein, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that.
I think one thing I would like to add also, any examples we can think about it will have some deficiencies to really comprehend. So even the sun example, or, you know, when we are talking stars. So these are, you know, to some level, we can have a little understanding, but Allah is much higher. And, you know, in the statement of, let's say, he is in no place, as one of the statement here, through whose power and knowledge is present everywhere. One example we could think about is like building a house. So when we find the construction worker, which can build like beautiful house from, let's say, bricks, but is it enough? Not enough. So what we need, like we need an architecture, because the construction builder cannot just build anywhere he wants. We need kind of some fine tuning, some acceptance from the town, you know, certain dimension. Maybe some areas will be narrow, some areas wide. So he has to follow a plan which is coming from the manifestation of knowledge. So in this example, the power is the manifestation of this construction builder, but the knowledge is referring to this architectural plan. So in the example, like sunlight is coming, we see the example, let's say heat, one element coming from the sun, and there is also a shiny part. So in the power side, we are seeing the reflection of Ism Qadir, you know, the power, and the knowledge is Alim, and in this example of like building a house. But of course, it's, you know, getting closer our understanding. But you know, of course, there might be some deficiencies also with our examples. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember saying Allah is unique when we do like comparisons, allegories here, like even at the end of the first page, it says his sacred qualities and attributes can only be considered through allegory and comparison. But even with the comparisons, it's deficient. It's just for us to get our understanding closer. Jazakallah. And in the comments, I see one thing. I'm in the beginning of the panel, Natavi says Qayyumiyya is so similar to electricity. If there is no Qayyumiyya, there is no life, nothing. It's all blackout. Colin Hocam, any comments on this? Qayyumiyya is like electricity.
I think it's a very good example, and I think that Mustafa is right about metaphors and examples and comparisons are always going to be, they're always going to fail at the end. They're only going to tell us part of the truth. You know, we are limited, and it's very difficult to be able to say anything definitive with a metaphor. So they are always only partially helpful. But yeah, the electricity, I think, is a very good. It's a good example, because when the electricity fails, then the device doesn't work anymore. So yeah, it's a helpful way of explaining, I think.
And any comments about Abi? God can give, but creation cannot carry it. That's when we talked about Allah given power or knowledge to beings. Colin Hocam, can you elaborate that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a digression here, but if we say God can give his attributes away to other things, it's meaningless, really. And I know that I know that we have problems saying God cannot do X, Y, or Z. But things which are logically impossible, God doesn't do them. And to imagine that he can do things which are logically impossible is imagining that he's not God anymore, because, you know, God doesn't do those things. It's not a godly thing for him to fragment himself. Because to what will he give his attributes? Is there anything else that is absolute, you know? So for him to give attributes to us is a meaningless proposition. You know, to put power in us is a meaningless idea. But to reflect his power on us, then why not? Because the power isn't leaving him, isn't going anywhere. It's just reflected, you know. It's like saying, can you give some of your self to the mirror? When you look in the mirror, can you give parts of your skin and your hair and your, you know, your flesh to the mirror? Well, it's crazy. You reflect yourself in the mirror. You don't actually give. You know, what you see in the mirror when you look in the mirror is not parts of you stuck to the mirror. It's a reflection. So I think that's, I mean, it's a very simple explanation, and I apologize, but that's, I don't think we can really explain it without these, you know, simple allusions and explanations.
There's one question here. How can we understand the difference between reflecting divine power and carrying it?
Well, carrying it, you actually have it. Reflecting it, you reflect it. It's like, it's, as we said with the mirror example, you reflect, your image is reflected. You don't give anything away for your image to carry parts of you. So I would have thought that was quite straightforward.
Thank you. And we talked about the fragmentation too. Here, if you want, I can read that part again. Any more comments about the first page? About the attributes of Allah we talked.
It's interesting that he does this, though, isn't it? It's interesting that he uses so much of his, you know, power of his pen to clear the ground, you know, and to make it quite clear that we're talking about a creator who has no peer, has no like, has no match, has no rival. So that when he talks about Qayyumiyya and the continuous creation of beings, then you know, we have no doubt. We have no doubt that nothing in creation can create. And then he goes to this very beautiful passage where he says, you know, that that nature is the portrait. It's not the portrait painter. Nature is the code. It's not the code maker. Again, he's trying to disavow this idea that we have of nature creating. And we know that we live in a world, in a secular world, where naturalism and atheistic materialism is very, very powerful and plays a very powerful role, a powerful indoctrinating role. And he is trying to provide an antidote to this. You know, he's making it quite clear that, you know, nature, it cannot create. It is the embroidery. It is the art. It's not the artist. It is an amazing, amazing passage.
I guess this was a very important point when we're trying to understand the Qayyumiyya, I guess it's again goes back to the ana. So we say we have God-given attributes, but it's really a very trusted, given, so to speak, not real, the sample of divine attribute, which we can be only a place of manifestation, because as Colin Hocam said it, we have no ability to carry any of those things. Can we really sustain or really control or really be a director of our power, our other qualities that is given to us? It's just we have a very pale feeling of as if we are directing it in a certain way, but we don't even know how we are really controlling those things. So it's an obvious thing that we cannot carry it, and from Allah's point of view, we cannot comprehend it. Maybe it's really hard to speak. I agree that it's we need to be very careful using the words. So when we have a manifestation on us, it's not godly anymore. It's given. It's trusted to us. We became just a place of manifestation. So we cannot be an inheritor, or now we don't have our own dominion inside the Allah's dominion. That I control this part and then He controls the rest. We can't talk like that. So I don't know how we can say we divide Allah's attributes or not, but from our own perspective, yes, we don't really own anything. It's still Allah's. It's not. It's a very pale, trusted sample that just given to us to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what my understanding. Maybe I make it more confusing, but
no, I think you made it much easier to understand. I think you made what I said more understandable, actually, Baikar. It's not a difficult thing. It's not an easy thing to understand, and I think you put it very eloquently and in a way that's easy to understand. And the mirror is another good example. Alhamdulillah, why is there such a thing as mirrors? It's such a help for us, because when you stand in front of a mirror and you see your reflection, do you actually give anything to that reflection, to that image from yourself? You give nothing, but at the same time, everything that you have is there. It's a puzzle, really. It's a conundrum. It's not you at all, but at the same time, it's nothing but you. And mirrors exist for this reason, not for us to see whether our hair is straight or whether our tie looks nice. These are secondary issues. Mirrors are there because they are an amazing explanatory object. They help us understand so many things. And Ustad uses mirrors so much. Someone somewhere should go through the Risale and look at the things which Ustad Nursi uses. In his metaphors. We know about the metaphor of the book. He talks about the book of creation, but there's so many different examples, and it would be good to have some kind of study of the things that he uses in his metaphors and in his comparisons.
Thank you, Kulnajam. Also, Baikar, as you said, when Allah gives us, for example, a certain land in this, like, for example, I have a small garden. Okay, I own this garden. I have this mulk, and the rest of the universe belongs to Allah. And I have certain power. Okay, and then Allah is like, let's say, he's billions of times, more powerful than me. That's wrong, right? Because all the power, all the mulk, all the land, all the knowledge that I have, it actually belongs to Allah. I'm just a place of manifestation. So it's not real power, actually, not real knowledge. It's just the thing that's reflected on the mirror. But what I see, like in the first paragraph here, is that people see this power, for example, the power of the sun attracting the object to himself, for example, like it makes the planets orbit around it. If they see this power, but that power is only a place of manifestation, right? But they attribute this power to the nature, that place of manifestation. Mustafa Hocam, any comments about this? Now we are in...
Very good insights. Thank you very much, Baykar and Colin Hocam. So it reminded me also last week when we were reviewing the ayahs at the beginning. Allah is saying that بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. He is the dominion of all things. This all things, it covers every layer of the creation, whether it's in the atomic level or all levels. But as you also, Omar, described, like when we have a garden, Allah is giving us some kind of, temporary knowledge and ownership. We have a trap that's saying that, oh, I could do this, I could do that. So we have some false feelings also. But the following ayahs, as we read it, له مقاليد السماوات والأرض. So Allah is mentioning also to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So if we are like a keychain, a human being, and Allah is putting us the keys, we can open the universe. For example, when I see a chemical element and then I'm dealing with it, if I see that one as a veil, and behind I see the name Alim, Qadir, Hakim, that means I can penetrate from the veil with the key and I reach the treasure. So I think the following ayah is also Allah is saying that وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِندَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ. So Allah has also the treasures with him. So the more we open the Asma Husna through the reflection, understanding in this world, but not having an ownership, is the treasure for us. Having a higher level of Iman, and inshallah, the more we can remove these veils and understand the true meaning, which is the essence of everything is behind, is the Asma Husna, and we are all pointing to La ilaha illallah, because all the names is showing on the Allah. So there is no way like you can escape. But on our journey, if we get stuck somewhere and we do egoism, like in the case of Ena Risale-i Ustad is describing, Mana ismi and Mana harfi, we get lost. We cannot take the keys, we cannot reach to the treasure. We end up like having a loser. Thank you.
It's an excellent point, Mustafa. Thank you.
Also, what I hear in the chat, so maybe it's kind of related. Mehmet House says, there is no us, it is all who Allah. We think we exist, but it is an assumption entity that we have. Also, Harun Hocam's like his, I guess, comment is also similar. One approach to reflection of names is perceiving each name as a layer of a physical entity. Material itself is a reflection of Qadir, the name Qadir. The colors are reflections of the name Mulawwin. Being alive layer is the reflection of Hayy. Size scale layer is the reflection of Hakim, Hakam, Alim. Sustenance of all qualities of the entity is another layer by the name Qayyum. All layers require various reflections for us to conceive a single entity.
MashaAllah. And taking off those veils conceptually means understanding the creation and understanding who the owner of the creation is.
And also Bakarab says key is a keyword. Ana is the key, not the treasure, but opens the treasure.
That's really interesting because I was talking to someone the other day about Anna and the fact that we reflect all of God's names, but we reflect God's, in a sense, not just the names. For example, God says, I was a hidden treasure. I am a hidden treasure, and I created humankind in order to know me. Ana, the nafs itself, when it's in the degenerate position, when it's in the rebellious position, Ana thinks it is a hidden treasure and it is waiting to be known by everyone. It wants everyone's attention. It wants everyone's worship, in fact. Everyone in a nafsi, in a rebellious position, thinks that they are, in a sense, a kind of God. And we see this. We see the way that nafs works in the world. Everyone wants to be bowed down to in some way.
Inshallah, also before we finish the description of nature, any comments on the description of the nature, like divine? It says divine art cannot be the artist. It's a dominical book, not the scribe. And it's a law, cannot be the power. It's all, I believe, like, all we talked, nature is like a mirror, right? It's, not the source. Mirror has no power, no light, nothing. But it's a good, like, object, tool to reflect.
Yeah, I mean, nature is the god of the naturalists, but Ostad knocks this on the head, in these 9 or 10 sentences here. It's quite clear that nature is the receiver, not the giver. It's amazing. It's an amazing passage. Which other scholar do you know that goes to this depth?
Alhamdulillah. It's so interesting, now the more I reflect, for example, the sun example, sun, we say it has the power to attract, right? In the universe, we say big objects have the power to attract things to itself. But now what we see is that, it's all that power of attraction is only a place of manifestation of God's power, Allah's power, right? The power of attraction. In that power is just a reflection, not the source. So Mustafa Hocam, can we say that sun has no power, right? And that's the power of attraction itself, in itself.
Yeah, I mean, when you started saying here the highlighted part, it's a law and cannot be the power. Can we consider it like in nature, when we examine, there is a lot of laws, okay? Gravity laws, Newton's law. I mean, many given names like for the laws, but collectively, we say it, let's say nature. But nature is not a mother, what they call it, like mother nature. It doesn't have a personality. It doesn't have the power. So one example to maybe have a better understanding is the traffic rules. So we have the traffic rules to stop in the red light. It's a law, but does it have a power? No. Unless someone using his power and will, the law cannot stop him. So in the middle of the night, you have a stop sign. And if that person does not listen to that stop line, he can make a right, left turn and cross the line. Who's going to stop him? So the power is not within the law, but power is the someone like who has the will and power and, you know, this decision making. So in the nature, we don't see it. Yeah, there are all the laws which makes uniform, perfect order, which Allah has put it as, you know, Shariat Ilahiyya, because to have a wonderful system, you need to put the laws first and then employ over there. But the naturalist or materialist is claiming that, oh, you know, Mother Nature has this, you know, they are giving some kind of external personality to the laws, but in reality, the law does not have this external body, right?
No.
It's called reification, isn't it? It's a reification fallacy. They talk about nature as though it's a person. At least, if you want to talk about nature as a person, it should be sister nature, not mother nature, because nature is the things out there are our brothers and sisters, not our mother.
It's also quite interesting, like the Ustad is saying that it's a dominical book and cannot be described. So I think in another session, when we were talking about the seventh word, the Ustad is saying that the Quran reads the universe and the vast mosque of the creation. So Quran is talking about all layers of creation in a certain way, which is pointing, you know, always to La ilaha illallah. But the open form of the Quran is like a universe. If the meanings, let's say, you know, in the Quran is like, if we explore or have an understanding with maybe thinking through the sciences and all these things, so it's like a seed is opening and becoming like a tree. So it is actually a living book. We see it as a universe rather than not it's like a subscribe, right?
A question that comes to my mind is, how do scientists, how do they rationalize the laws? Do they see the laws as having an external existence? I mean, I'm not a scientist at all, and I don't know how scientists, you know, scientific consensus. Is there scientific consensus as to what a law is actually? Does it have an external existence in order to be able to have power? What kind of ontology, you know, are we thinking of here when we talk about a law? What kind of existence do they have? Could a scientist among us tell us?
Yeah, I mean, like, there are different groups to do the interpretation, but what I understood shortly is they see the power, they see the energy, they see the systematic way of this flowing the laws, how it's been in low level, high level, and they know our limitation and everything. But what they say is the energy was there. So they give some kind of eternal, like azali attribute to the energy. And then they want to give, based on these rules, let's say to electrons, or electrons are coming together. This atom has a tendency to let's say, get into another atom in certain way, because they are talking about, let's say, in one atom in the outer shell where the electrons are spinning, he wants to have, let's say, the rule, we call it octet. The octet is the outer shell should be 8 electrons. If it's one missing, that means to sustain the stability of this atom, it has to go to another atom to benefit it, to cooperate it. So they give some personality to atomic level, giving like kind of a human. I mean, let's say I have certain characteristic, I am approaching someone, I am doing a circle of friendship using, let's say, my willpower. Similarly, when we look the periodic table in the chemistry, we have carbon, fluor, oxygen. Each of them have some deficiencies. Allah has created that way. But to get together with different combination and some outcomes in the science, we are using some terms as if like they have like a human character. Oh, okay, fluorine as like a friendly person. He wants to get with everyone. He needs one electron, but when he sees the sodium, he's approaching that. They sit together and having a coffee or tea. So from there, out of friendship, it brings us some useful product. So somehow we have stories to cover up, to give some personality, a bit by bit here and there. At the end, may Allah forgive us and protect us, doing like little shirk here and there. And with the beauty we see over there, when you are staying away from the Tawheed, you get lost, okay? And if these terms and stories is being deployed by so-called professors, Nobel Prize winners, and powerful person, some people, even though they may not understand to deep level, they can follow them. So it's kind of like, storytelling, and also giving some facts, but some also different way of explanation, and having these personalities. Sorry, I don't know. Did I confuse you more?
No. That's a great explanation. It's a brilliant explanation, actually. It makes you realize how stupid these people are, and how gullible people are, and how superstitious they are. And they are the ones who continuously call us backward and superstitious. But think of it, your example of fluorine and sodium was an excellent one. And I've used that myself, actually, because fluorine and sodium, when they come together as friends, you say, let's meet over a coffee, let's get together and let's make something useful. But then when they meet, they obliterate each other. Fluorine no longer exists. It's kind of a suicide pact. Now, because when they meet, there's no longer fluorine and sodium. It becomes salt. So it's a kind of, a suicide mission, which is crazy. Which person in their right mind would do that? And they don't think of these things,
Yeah.
It's a children's stories, as you say. It's a very good way of describing, but very dangerous, because most people like me are not scientifically minded, and we buy these things,
Yeah. I mean, like we have students coming and we are trying to explain these things to them. I mean, there is a certain picture, you need to describe them because it's in the context of, like, let's say, science book. But, one of the atoms I'm working for many years is the fluorine, as I said. Fluorine, in the normal case, it's a gas. You cannot see, you cannot feel it. But to make it like kind of a touching and feeling this, we need to freeze them down to minus 200 degrees. It becomes like a liquid yellowish color. But as scientists, when we are looking the art of Allah, the fluorine has a very good friendship with calcium. Like calcium and fluorine, they are sitting on the same table as calcium fluoride. But what we are doing is, because Allah is maybe giving us a temporary shepherd of the particles, we are pouring some acid to them so that we break their friendship. Because we want to know in the playground what happens if I break their friendship. So we take this fluoride, we combine them with hydrogen. But what happens with this friendship, we don't know much exactly how it's going to turn out, but it becomes a very destructive chemical, which is hydrogen fluoride. We call HF. The HF, if it touches one drop to your skin, it will penetrate to your skin, it will penetrate to your meat, it will kill to the calcium in your bone, meaning if one drop touches to us, we can lose our finger. So we play, there is a high energy, there is a risk with the combination, but Allah is giving us some kind of modification, area where we try here and there. But at the end, did we create something? No, we just mix not CAF, we mix it HF. And from that HF, we added another chemical. We are having a sodium fluoride. This is what you are putting in your mouth as the toothpaste. because in the toothpaste, active ingredient is the sodium fluoride. So we are changing from one form to another one. And while we are changing, we make stories, okay? Some of them is our observation, some of them with our assumptions. But these assumptions are the law, or, I mean, it's not a law. We have a prediction. To a certain level, we can see maybe a real side of the picture, but in one side also, it's not fully discoverable for us, because any human being, we have a limitation. So if this limitation is there, you don't know the complexity, you are just thinking that it should be this way, and they have an authority to do that way. So kind of, in summary, we have explanation to a level, but a certain level you don't have a true explanation, to show you what is the details of the story.
Mustafa abi, can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. It's a very good example that you say that some scientists humanizes unliving things in chemistry with anthropomorphic attributes, and they give agency to those particles. So in response to Colin Hoja's question about the ways scientists rationalize natural laws, I can say that there's no consensus actually among the scientists, and Bruno Latour, a professor of anthropology of science, actually debunks the myth of objectivity in scientific discourse. This is a French professor who discusses that the science is not purely objective, and every scientist has some sort of political ideology behind its scientific discourse, and he explains this in his book, We Have Never Been Modern. It's a really good book. If you have some time, you can have a glance at it. And
who is the author? Sorry, Hussein. Who is the author?
Bruno Latour. BrunoLatour.
Thank
He's
you.
a French professor.
Thank you so much.
And this discussion goes back to the long Enlightenment era. There were several philosophers and scientists like Newton, as far as I remember, if I'm not mistaken. They were really religious people, but there were others as well. But currently, these secular dogma dominates the public sphere all around the world. But in fact, there is no consensus among the scientists as well as among the philosophers in this question. And it goes back all the way back to the 18th century and maybe earlier than that. So we assume that this public discourse, the objectivity of science, as well as the natural laws, organizing, designing things on their own, this is really a myth. And we should actually comfortably declare, to people around us that there's no consensus. You can explain the creation in that way. I can explain in this way. We can only observe what's happening and the results, consequences. But it's ultimately a philosophical question to answer the question: who does that? Why does he do that? And what's the ultimate purpose or rationale behind the existence? So this is a philosophical
Have you
question.
written on this, Hussein? Have you written anything on this?
No, not yet. Hopefully, I may write something maybe in the future.
You must, inshallah, because it's very important, because now we have Muslims who are trying to validate science by appealing to Islam, and they are going through all of these kind of gymnastic contortions of tafsir, trying to make the Quran fit science, and basically they're trying to validate science by their creative hermeneutics, and it's very dangerous, extremely dangerous. They're doing it with evolution, and they're doing it as we speak, and it's extremely it's a heinous kind. It's a crime, really, I think. And for people like you who have such a great understanding, and thank you again for alerting us to this work. It's very, very important, and I hope that you will, inshallah, write on this in the future.
Inshallah, I have very little background on science and on the discipline of history of science, but I really know some other people. We may organize a kind of a group research and we can think about that. Yeah, I know a couple of friends in Istanbul, for example. But anyway,
I would be interested in being party to your group as well, even if it's only as an observer.
okay, I took my note here. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kulun Hocam, Hüseyin Hocam, Mustafa Hocam. Alhamdulillah. We talked quite a bit about nature. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So inshallah, next week we can continue from here. Kulun Hocam, can you make dua inshallah before we finish, or if you have final comments?
I don't have any comments. I've spoken far too much, so I will leave the dua to Mustafa.
Please, Kulun Hocam, this week, if you can make it.
Well, my dua basically is, Ya Allah, please give us the perspicacity and the understanding and the patience to look at your creation as objectively as we can, and to steer ourselves away from any kind of ideological reading of your truths and of the truths of your names as they are manifest. Let us see things kama hiya, as they are, as they really are, rather than as we would like them to be. Al-Fatiha.